New Mexico, 1882. The sun claws at the earth, baking the cracked dirt of a lonesome canyon. A woman stands in its heart, her shadow trembling on the scorched ground. Lila, an Apache beauty, her deer-hide dress torn at the shoulder, clings to her curves, damp with sweat. Her breasts heave beneath the frayed leather, rising with each ragged breath, her dark eyes wild, locked on the horizon. She's bound to a weathered post, wrists raw, her body arched in defiance against the ropes biting her skin. The air hums with danger. Fresh hoof prints circle the dust, and a wolf's howl slices the dusk. Jacob Holt, a lone rider, halts his mule on the ridge above. His gaze catches her exposed thigh, the sweat tracing the curve of her waist. His throat tightens, a forbidden heat stirring in his chest. She's a stranger, a woman left to die, yet her presence pulls at him, raw and untamed. He grips his knife, the blade glinting under the dying sun, and steps toward her. Each bootfall echoes in the silence, his pulse racing. To cut her free is to invite chaos into his solitary world. To leave her is to damn his soul. What will he do now? If this canyon's call pulls you in, let us know where you're listening from in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and ride with us into this tale of desire and redemption. The canyon holds its breath as Jacob carries Lila into his cabin, her body light as a ghost in his arms. Her deer-hide dress, torn and clinging, brushes against his chest, her breath warm against his neck. He lays her on the cot, her curves sinking into the rough blanket, her dark hair spilling like ink across the pillow. She's half conscious, eyes fluttering, lips cracked and trembling. Jacob steps back, his hands flexing, fighting the urge to linger. He's a man who's known loss. Wife and daughter, taken by fever back in Illinois. Their ghosts haunt his every step. And this woman, this stranger, stirs something he's buried deep. He stokes the stove, embers crackling, casting shadows that dance across her skin. Lila stirs, her fingers clutching the blanket, pulling it tight over her chest. Her eyes, black as midnight, fix on him. Wary, searching. Why? She rasps, voice like dry leaves. Jacob doesn't answer. He kneels, offers a tin cup of water, his fingers brushing hers. The touch is brief, electric, but he pulls back. You're safe, he says, voice low, rough. She drinks slowly, each swallow a fight, her throat working under the dim light. She doesn't trust him. Not yet. Days pass and the cabin's quiet. Jacob tends to his work, checking telegraph lines, hammering pins, the mule plodding beside him. Lila heals, moving like a shadow through his space. She sweeps the floor, her bare feet whispering on the planks, her hips swaying under the patched dress. Jacob catches himself watching, the way her fingers knot her braid, the curve of her neck as she bends to stir a pot. He turns away, jaw tight, guilt gnawing at him. He's no savior, just a man running from his past. What right does he have to want her? One evening, as the canyon glows red under a sinking sun, Lila speaks. They said I brought death, she says, standing by the stove, her back to him. Her voice is steady now, but it carries pain. A child drank from a poisoned stream. They blamed me. Jacob sets down his knife, the blade he used to free her glinting on the table. You didn't, he says. She turns, her eyes sharp. You don't know me. Her words cut, a challenge. He meets her gaze, sees the fire in her, the strength beneath the scars. I know what I saw, he says. A woman left to die. She steps closer, the air between them heavy. Her dress, stitched with his old shirt, hugs her form, the leather outlining her waist. Jacob's breath catches, but he stays still. I could leave, she says, testing him. Prove I'm no burden. His chest tightens. He sees his daughter's face in a flash. Pale, lifeless, gone. "Stay," he says, softer than he means. "You owe me nothing." Lila's lips part, but she says no more. She turns back to the stove, her shoulders stiff, the space between them a canyon of its own. The next morning, Jacob finds her outside, sweeping the porch. Her braid swings as she moves, beads catching the light. She pauses, catching his stare, and for a moment her eyes soften. "You sleep on the ground," she says, not a question. "Only when someone needs the bed," he replies, busying himself with the mule's harness. She steps closer, the broom still in her hands, her body close enough that he smells the sage on her skin. "You said ghosts," she murmurs. "Your family?" He nods, throat tight. "Wife and daughter. Fever took 'em. I couldn't, His voice breaks. He turns away, but her hand grazes his arm, light as a breeze. "I had a mother," she says, voice low. "A brother. They didn't fight for me." Her fingers linger, warm, steady. Jacob's heart kicks a forbidden pulse. He wants to pull her close, to feel her heat against him, but the weight of his past holds him back. He steps away, grabbing his rifle. "Traps need checking," he mutters, leaving her standing there, the broom still in her hands. That night, he sits by the fire pit outside, the stars sharp above the canyon rim. Lila's shadow moves in the cabin window, her silhouette curving against the lamplight. He wonders what she'd feel like in his arms, her breath against his skin. But he's a broken man, and she's a woman burned by betrayal. The distance between them is safer, for now. The canyon hums with a restless quiet, stars punching through the black above. Inside the cabin, Lila moves with purpose, her bare feet soft on the plank floor. She bends to stoke the stove, her deer-hide dress pulling tight across her hips, the torn hem riding up her thigh. Jacob watches from the table, his hands idle on a coil of telegraph wire, his pulse quickening. Her braid sways, beads clicking softly, and when she turns, her dark eyes catch his. Bold, searching, no longer afraid. The air thickens, heavy with unspoken want. She steps closer, setting a tin cup of mint tea beside him. Her fingers linger near his, close enough for him to feel her warmth. "You don't look at me like they did," she says, voice low, a challenge wrapped in silk. Jacob's throat tightens. He wants to touch her, to trace the curve of her waist, but his hands stay still, anchored by the weight of his past. "I ain't them," he says, voice rough. Her lips part, a faint smile, and she leans in, her breath brushing his cheek. The space between them crackles, a spark waiting to catch. Days blur into a rhythm of shared work. Lila learns the telegraph lines, her nimble fingers stripping rust from old wire, her body brushing his as they coil it together. Each touch, a hand grazing his arm, her shoulder against his, stokes the fire he's tried to bury. One afternoon by the creek, she kneels to wash linens, her dress damp, clinging to her curves. The water beads on her arms, catching the sun, and Jacob's gaze lingers on the swell of her chest, the way her breath quickens under his stare. She looks up, eyes locking with his, and for a moment, neither moves. "You're staring," she says, voice teasing but thick with heat. He turns away, jaw tight, but his blood hums. That night, the cabin feels smaller, the air charged. Lila stands by the cot, untying her braid, her hair falling loose, framing her face like a dark halo. Jacob sits by the stove, cleaning his rifle, but his eyes follow her every move. She slips off her dress's knotted sleeve, the leather sliding down to reveal the smooth curve of her shoulder, the edge of her breast barely covered. She steps toward him, slow, deliberate, her hips swaying with each step. "You don't touch me," she says, voice soft but firm, standing close now. Her scent, sage and earth, filling his senses. His hands freeze on the rifle. "Not unless you ask," he says, voice strained, his eyes tracing the line of her throat. She kneels beside him, her hand resting on his, warm, steady. I'm asking. The words hit like a spark to dry grass. Jacob stands, slow, his fingers brushing her arm, trailing up to her cheek. Her breath catches, her body leaning into his touch. He pulls her close, their lips meeting, tentative at first, then hungry, her hands tugging at his shirt, his fingers sliding under the edge of her dress. The leather falls away, her skin hot against his, her curves pressing into him. She gasps, her nails grazing his back, and he lifts her, carrying her to the cot. Their breaths mingle, heavy, urgent, as they sink into the blanket, her thighs wrapping around his. A sharp crack splits the night, a branch snapping outside, too close. Jacob freezes, his hand still on her hip, her breath hot against his neck. Leela's eyes widen, her body tensing beneath him. Someone's out there, she whispers, fear creeping into her voice. He pulls back, grabbing his rifle, heart pounding, not from desire now, but dread. He moves to the window, peering into the dark. Shadows shift beyond the cabin, hoofprints fresh in the dust, a low murmur of voices. Thieves, maybe, or worse, men from her tribe, hunting her still. Jacob turns to Lila, her dress half on, her chest rising fast. Stay low, he says, voice hard. She nods, slipping to the floor, her hand reaching for the knife he used to free her, now tucked in her belt. The cabin door creaks as he steps outside, rifle raised, the night air cold against his sweat-damp skin. 3 riders loom at the canyon's edge, their silhouettes jagged against the starlight. One calls out, voice rough, demanding Lila, claiming she knows a secret, a hidden vein of silver her tribe guards. Jacob's grip tightens. He's no stranger to fighting, but this is her fight too. Lila steps out, knife in hand, her dress tied loose, but her stance fierce. I'm no curse, she says, voice steady, her eyes burning, and I ain't yours. The riders laugh, but Jacob cocks his rifle, the sound cutting through their mockery. Leave, he says, or you don't. The lead rider hesitates, his hand on his pistol, but Lila steps forward, her blade glinting, her body taut with defiance. The tension holds, thick as smoke, until the riders turn, their horses fading into the dark. Back inside, Lila's hands tremble, but she doesn't drop the knife. Jacob sets his rifle down, his eyes on her, the heat of their earlier moments still lingering. You didn't run, he says. She meets his gaze, her lips curving slightly. Neither did you. They don't touch, not yet, but the air between them hums with something new. Trust, raw and unspoken. The cabin door swings shut, the night's chill locked outside. Lila stands in the dim glow, her knife clutched tight, its edge flashing in the stove's firelight. Her deer-hide dress, loosened from the struggle, hugs her sweat-slicked curves, the torn leather tracing the swell of her hips, the rise of her chest, with each quick breath. Jacob leans his rifle against the wall, his eyes burning into hers, desire warring with restraint. The air crackles, heavy with the fight's aftermath, their pulses pounding in sync. She steps forward, her fingers seizing his shirt, pulling him into her. Their mouths collide, fierce and desperate, her hands clawing at his back. He lifts her, her legs curling around him, and they crash onto the cot, the blanket twisting beneath them. Her dress falls away, baring her bronze skin, scarred yet radiant. His fingers trace her thighs, her moans sharp as she arches into him. Their bodies meld, urgent, raw, the creak of the cot drowned by their ragged breaths. It's not just passion, it's a vow, a reclaiming of life from the jaws of death. Morning spills gold across the canyon, softening the cabin's rough edges. Lila rests against Jacob, her head nestled in the crook of his shoulder, her fingers grazing the coarse hair on his chest. He brushes a kiss across her forehead, his touch gentle now, anchoring. "You're mine," he murmurs, voice low. She lifts her eyes, fierce yet soft. "And you're mine." The words bind them, stronger than rope. They rise, her dress retied, hugging her form like a second skin. She moves to the kettle, her braid swinging, and Jacob watches, his heart no longer heavy with ghosts. They ride to Cold Brush Junction, under a sky sharp with autumn's bite. Lila sits close on the mule, her hand warm on Jacob's arm. Her scent, sage and earth, steadying him. The town stairs cut like knives, mouths tightening at the Apache woman beside him. In the general store, the owner, a bearded man with a crooked leg, narrows his eyes. "She yours," he grumbles. Jacob's hand clenches. "My wife," he says, voice hard, unyielding. Lila's breath catches, her gaze flicking to him, pride sparking in her eyes. A man in the corner sneers, muttering, "Savage." Lila steps forward, her hand on the knife at her belt, her voice steady. "I'm no one's curse." The room stills, the owner backing down, packing their flour, beans, and a small kettle. Outside, Jacob pulls her close, his lips brushing her temple. "You're with me," he whispers. Her fingers find his, holding tight. Back in the canyon, they seal their bond. No church, no witnesses, just the stars and the wind's low hum. Lila sings an Apache melody, her voice weaving through the night, raw and haunting. She ties a beaded cord from her old dress around Jacob's wrist, her touch lingering, warm. He binds a strip of his coat around hers, his fingers steady, reverent. They carve a mark into the doorframe, a half moon crossed by an arrow, their lives entwined. Her lips meet his, slow, certain, the canyon bearing witness to their unspoken vows. Frost dusts the canyon as winter settles in. Lila's belly curves gently under her new dress, crafted from deer hide Jacob traded for, its seams hugging her hips. She moves with care, her hands often resting on the swell, a quiet smile lighting her face as she stirs a pot of rabbit stew. One dusk, she sets a tiny moccasin on the shelf, its leather soft, stitches tight. "For Emma," she says, naming their child, after Jacob's lost daughter. His chest tightens, eyes stinging. He takes her hand, kissing the pulse at her wrist, the beaded cord still tied there. "You're no curse," he says. "You're my home." She leans into him, her warmth a shield against the cold. They plant seeds in the early thaw. Beans, carrots, a ring of sage near the door. The cabin, once a shell, hums with life, its walls holding their shared silences, their stolen glances. Lila sweeps the stoop, her dress swaying, her body glowing in the morning sun. Jacob stacks kindling, his shirt open, sweat tracing his broad shoulders. Their eyes meet, a spark passing between them, their bond forged in fire and time. The mule grazes lazily. The creek runs steady, and the canyon, once a grave for ghosts, cradles their hope. One evening, they sit on the porch, Lila's head resting on Jacob's chest, her hand in his. The stars blaze above, the wind a soft whisper. "I saw them in my dreams," she says, voice low. "My people, calling me back. I didn't go." He squeezes her hand, his thumb tracing her knuckles. "You belong here." She looks up, eyes fierce with certainty. "With you." The canyon stretches wide, its silence no longer heavy but warm. A haven. Inside, the knife that freed her sits beside the moccasin, next to a carved spoon, symbols of their hard-won peace. This canyon's tale ends here, but its echoes carry on. If their fire warmed your soul, drop a like, tell us where you're listening from, or send a super thanks to keep these stories burning. Ride with us again, under the next desert sky.